Yeah.
Affected? Effected?
Affected.
Affected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's late and I don't have to grammar properly.
Affect is a verb. Effect is a
I'm
noun.
not remembering
Except
the
when
others.
affect is a noun.
Oh, that's not helpful.
I managed to move just often enough to miss the
Oh, no.
grammar
You-
section of every
Everybody gets
school I went to. So I don't know grammar.
Oh, when I was at school one year, we went into like whatever the next grade was, and we hit like the grammar section we were supposed to go through, and the teacher was like, "Didn't you guys all learn this last year?" And of course we just yelled yes, and he was like, "Great!" And he basically was like, "We're skipping that, then we're going into the next thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's the thing you should do. Listen to all the kids in the class who definitely." Because I believe the year before, the teacher was like, "Oh, you'll all learn this next year."
Jeez.
You're reading the Chiron.
Yeah, I did just read the
Yeah.
Chiron, and I don't like it. When I moved to the
Oh,
school
yeah.
I graduated from, it was at the same school as Daniel, actually, in grade 10 to 12. They kept on talking about diagramming sentences, and I still don't know what that is. It was something they learned at some point, and I'm like, I read a bunch of books. I don't know. Please leave me alone.
I missed the same thing. And for years, people were like, well, you just diagram the sentence. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Didn't they teach that in school? They taught me in school.
Nope.
It's like, they didn't teach me that ever.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about right now.
Yeah. There's a means by which you can take a sentence and you draw a bunch of lines underneath it to mark this is how the sentence has to proceed
This
in
is
this
acting
order.
on this, and here's the antecedent to this, and this is the
Yeah.
pronoun for
What?
this other thing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a flow chart?
Yeah.
I missed out on a flow chart?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a grammar flow chart.
I'm sorry. But it was a grammar flowchart, so you didn't miss much.
No.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Probably all flows in one direction.
It's one of these things that's like it made it into some curriculum somewhere, but even then, like again, in the same city, I had people saying that they took it in elementary school, and I'm like, it never happened for me in my elementary school, different part of the city.
I remember vaguely in like grade 3 or 4 when like you're starting to learn like multiples but you're doing like double digits and stuff, so they're trying to get you to do the long form multiplication thing.
Yeah.
That we had, if you couldn't do write the letters, the numbers up and down, and then figure it out, whatever method, our teacher had this other method where you drew a square and you put the numbers in a certain way, and there were like diagonal lines you did, and then you could add numbers and it would all equal out. And that was how I had to do it for the longest time. But then it clicked over at some point where I could do it the other way, and then I've completely forgotten how the other one worked. But I remember it just being this big diagram thing and like squares and stuff.
So
and
that's either cross multiplication or linear algebra.
No.
Okay, good.
Okay.
No, I know what those things are, and that was not it.
Good, because linear algebra was like that was a university class I had to take, which was super fun. But
I still remember the day I finally got algebra.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
I never did.
That was weird. The teacher wrote a thing on the board, and I was just like, "Oh shoot, I understand now. I'm supposed to be making one side equal the same thing on the other side.
Yeah.
Why did no one explain that part?"
Really should have told you that on the first day. That's the whole point of algebra.
Yeah.
my dad taught me how to do algebra in grade 6 in about 60 seconds. We were standing on the stairs in our house. I remember this very clearly. And I was like, so, and then algebra is really hard. He's like, it's not that hard. I'm like, what do you mean? And he just kind of went through really fast how it works. It's like, you know how like 8 plus 4 equals 12? I'm like, yeah. He says, okay, so 8 plus 4 equals X. And I'm like, what do you mean X? And he's like, well, X just stands in for whatever the answer is. I'm like, okay, well, then 8 plus 4 equals 12. I'm like, right. So what does X equal? X equals 12. Okay, great. So I'm going to say this now. Y plus 4 equals 12. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, why doesn't it make any sense? It's like, well, because why does he? Yeah, but why standing in for something? What does it stand in for? I don't know. It's 8 because 8 plus 4 equals 12. So then y equals 8. And he's like, yeah, that's algebra. Yeah. And I'm like, then why do they make such a big deal about it in Archie comics all the time?
That wouldn't have worked for me. I literally didn't get it until the teacher wrote 0 equals 0 on the board.
See,
yeah.
I got what you were saying, Beige, but then there hit a point in algebra where I, an AB student, had so much trouble understanding that I was like failing the class, and I couldn't figure out why. It was like slamming into a brick wall in my brain, and
Right.
I could not do
Mhm.
2D graphing. And then the semester change happened and we started 3D graphing. And as soon as they put the Z dimension in,
Right.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this, sure, yeah, no problem. Let
And
me
it
graph
all-
that for you.
That's great.
But
It's
then
super
I
good.
also nearly failed calculus and
Oh.
flew through geometry. So I'm definitely on that side of the equation.
Was it? It's physics that has all the maths.
Yes.
Yeah, I took physics because I was like, all right, I like math and I'm good at math. And for what I understood the concepts, but for
Uh-huh.
whatever reason, when I put all the numbers down and I did the things, I always got the wrong answer. And the teacher would just look at my stuff and be like, "Oh yeah, you seem to know what you're doing." And I'm like, "But why do I keep getting it wrong?" And then, but like, there would be all the other students who my friends who I would talk to would be like, "I don't understand what's going on, but look, I'm getting like 80% and everything's fine." I'm like, "Why do I understand the concepts but I'm failing?
Mm.
Why?" And of course, you have a teacher who won't help you because they're like, "Nah, you look like you know what you're doing." I'm like, "I don't. I'm not trying to fake my way through a thing. I really don't know why I'm not doing the thing."
Mm.
Yeah.
I also had a really weird time with like percentages. The like is over of equals percent over 100 equation just got reduced in my brain to like apple is to apple tree as orange is to orange tree. Those kinds of verbal equations.
Ah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
just turned it into a word puzzle, and that's how I solved it.
Okay.
I
Okay.
still don't know how I did that. It was weird.
Sometimes it does come down to you making weird little
Like,
rules for yourself, right?
yeah, I think I used my language skills to like prop up my failing math skills. I don't know. There's a reason I took no maths in university.
Yeah, same.
It's a bad.
Oh
bad
no,
thing.
goodness no.
No.
Well, no, I guess I had to take accounting like 16 million times.
I failed one of my first year programming classes I took.
Oh.
And put off doing it again because I had to take it apparently. Apparently I was told this is the prereq for things you're doing. I'm like, okay. And so I put it off and I put it off and I put it off until like the last year of university. So here I am. I'm in my 6th year because I've been doing things over a long period of time. And I'm like, okay, time to take this class, this first year computer class. I'm going to do it this time. And the dumb thing is I passed the first one, but the second one I had to do in my first year, I could not pass it. And I only failed it by like 5 points.
Mhm.
And because I didn't turn in my last assignment, the dude was like, I can't even give you part marks. Like you didn't turn in your last assignment. I'm like, I didn't have time. He's like, you should just turn in what you had. I could have given you something for it. You could have
Oh,
passed. I'm like, well,
man.
that sucks.
Geez.
But
Now you tell me.
I aced it.
Oh dang.
I mean, aced it, but I aced it compared to how I did before. Like I did way better before, and it was also the last year they were offering my programming in Turbo Pascal because everything was moving to Java, and I'd only ever learned Turbo Pascal. So I was like, I have to take it in Turbo Pascal so I can get the hell out of this whole nightmare that I'm in. And so I did it, and I was like, great, I got out of there with all the marks I need to move on. I'm like, yeah, but that class isn't what you need to actually pass. You needed the second year computer class. So I took that next semester, passed, and I got my degree. It's all wonderful. Everything ended wonderfully. But it was that class was like, oh, I didn't understand that 5 years ago because I wasn't ready to understand it yet. My brain couldn't keep up with what was going on. And now that I'm here 5 years later, I look at everything again. I'm like, I'm getting this concept, I know how recursion works. I know how lists works. I know these things.
Sometimes you do need to review a thing a couple of times.
Yeah.
It needs
Or
to
you
kind of
really
sit in
do
your
get
brain a
it.
bit.
Yeah.
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 And failure doesn't mean that you failed. Failure just means that you need to do it again so you can actually figure out how it works.
And also, when you learn that first time that you should just hand in a project no matter what you got done, like it doesn't have to be completely done to receive marks.
Yeah.
That's a good lesson to learn real early on.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, when I was in like 5th grade, I completely did not turn in. We were supposed to do like an essay about an endangered animal. And I just kind of, it didn't time manage very well and just went, that'll be fine. And my parents didn't find out that I hadn't turned this thing in until the open house and mine wasn't on the table. and the teacher was like, she could still make it up, I guess. And I banged it out and got a B with just a penalty for being late.
Dang.
Like, oh,
That's
I should
awesome.
have just done that in the first place.
That's my favorite when it's like, I'm gonna knock 20% off because it's late. You got 80, and I'm like, oh hell yeah.
I mean, I badly learned the lesson that I could do all my homework the morning of several times and get like a really good score, and that was bad. That really hurt me later.
Yeah.
I had a couple instances, once in grade 3 and once in second semester of university, of people telling me I had plagiarized. It was not true in either case, but I got real nervous about it, and it made me so anxious about writing essays that after the second incident in university, I did the rest of my papers less than 24 hours before they were due.
Because of anxiety?
Because of anxiety, which I do not
Ouch.
recommend unless you're a drama major and you can get away with that BS. I absolutely could.
Okay.
Because they were not that stringent on writing skills.
I wrote I had to do a for my selling and sales class. I had to in business school, so I had to do an essay that was selling myself as a resource to whatever. So
Oh God.
Like, to TELUS in this case, I think it was. I can't remember what it was, but it was like I had to pick a company and be like, I'm trying to get a job there, kind of thing. And here's all these things that you're asking for, and here's the things that I could do for you, and like whatever. And so I wrote this like thing. And I banged it out because I'm like, I don't have a lot of time to do whatever, and I just want to get this all done. So I banged at this thing, and it was good. Like I felt like, okay, yeah, this is good. It hangs together. It reads very easily. Like I'll be great. I hand it in. The day we're getting it all back, my prof, who I still remember his name, and maybe I won't drop it here, but I still remember him. He didn't hand mine back until the end.
No.
And then he put it on my desk. It was the last one he handed back, I think. But whatever, he handed it back to me, and then I flip it over. And there's no mark on it. It just says, see me after class.
Oh, somebody's in trouble.
And I'm like, what did I do? And so after class, I asked him, he's like, oh yeah, hang on, come with me. I had to go in the hallway. And he's like, I didn't mark it because I think you can do a better job.
Oh,
and I'm like,
okay.
really? And he's like, yeah, here, come see me at my office like later. We'll talk about why. And so he had office hours. So I went to see him in office hours. He's like, right. Okay, let's talk about this. The thing is that I think I've seen what you can do in my class, which again, this is the first essay I wrote for his class. It was the last thing I'm handing in was the first essay I'm writing, but apparently he really watches his students. And so he's like, I think you could do better. Because what you've shown me what you can do in class is that you've done better. I think you could do better doing this too. And just a lot of the stuff you're writing was just, it wasn't going anywhere and it didn't say anything. It's just, I thought I was actually doing a really good job. Like everything that was here was really good. And he grabbed it, he opened it up, picked a random spot and read out a sentence. And then I was like, sure, yeah, no, thanks. I'll return this to you later. Just walked out of his office.
Wow.
Like it wasn't even like, let's try to agree. It was like, I will hand in a better one of these later. You're right. And I left and I was like, he said, you got a couple days, you're gonna get marked down. Yeah, I'm like, okay. So I immediately was like, I was so mad. I went downstairs to the computer lab because the only place I had a computer open. And over the course of about 2 or 3 hours, I rewrote the whole thing, and I took all the advice he'd given me like earlier and like other times and whatever. But he's like, you got to do more of this. You got to do more of that. Bullet points to your friends in these kind of situations. You need to do this stuff. I'm like, I'm so never told to write bullet points. He's like, yeah, throw that away. That was bad advice. You're not writing an essay. You're writing something you're trying to sell people on. It's like, okay. And so, yeah, over the course of a couple hours, I rewrote the whole thing, and then I read it and reread it and reread it. And I'm like, no, this is the nut. This is it, right? It's nothing like this, whatever it was I wrote before. So I went back and I slid it under his door, and he emailed me a couple days later, and he's like, okay, come to my office. We need to talk about this.
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
So I go to his office and he hands it over, and he's like, minus 20%, 80%.
Nice.
Okay.
And I'm like, I've never 100%ed anything in university, especially at a 400 level class. And he was like, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I thought you could do. And I was like, oh yes. So
That's good.
it felt so good. and then at that point too, like I emailed him like a year or two later and asked him, like, I'm applying for a master's program. Would I be able to, like, could I use you as a reference? He's like, I would be so happy to give you a reference. You just let me know whenever you need one. I will give you whatever reference letter you need. Not a problem. And I was like, yes,
fantastic.
It's amazing.
Never got into a master's program, but
Yeah.
still.
But if you had tried, be in your corner.
Curiously, I had two things that I wrote that were kind of similar-ish, and both were like, continue writing in the style of this famous work. So one of them was a grade 12 paper where I was meant to write another chapter on to the end of Old Man and the Sea. And I aced that one. The teacher who was teaching the class, his kid was in that class, and he was a university professor. So he's like, I don't give out 100s, period, full stop. I never give out 100s.
Oh,
you got a 99 on this paper. I love it, and I'm keeping it because I like it as another chapter of The Old Man and the Sea. And I'm like, oh, dang, okay. And realized I could write in other authors' styles pretty well if I read enough of their work.
That's a good point. Yeah.
The next one was a drama paper where I was meant to write a continuation to, it wasn't Waiting for Godot. It was one of the other plays by the same author whose name I cannot remember right now. But I hadn't actually read the play, so I kind of skimmed it and then wrote the next scene kind of thing. And the head of the drama department who was teaching that course, like, read it out loud to the class because he liked it.
Oh gosh.
And then I also have these two like plagiarism things where one of them was literally just that I used the names of the characters from A Wrinkle in Time in the story I wrote. So I did a fanfic OC / characters, and my very, very uneducated grade 3 teacher, who I still have some salt about to this day, told me I had plagiarized because I had used the names of characters from another story. And I'm like, even in grade 3, I'm like, that's not plagiarism. You're stupid.
Yeah.
The university one also wasn't plagiarism, but I had this weird thing with this professor where I would hear her talk and I would understand her words, and then she would stop talking and I would stop understanding. And she had assigned this paper, and I thought I understood it. I thought I knew what I was doing. And so I wrote a paper, and I got to the end of it, and I went, this paper is not at all answering the thesis statement, the question of the essay, but it is too late to redo it, so I'm turning it in.
Mm-hmm.
She calls me into her office and tells me that she has found a paper online. She looked into it because it didn't correctly answer the question. And she's found a paper online that is not my paper, but it has the same paragraph structure. It makes some of the same points. And so therefore I had plagiarized. And I'm like, also not plagiarism. But also I'm sitting in her office absolutely sobbing and being like, I'm so sorry, I didn't understand. I tried to do my best. That was why I had so much anxiety about writing papers.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, yeah, she was as nice as she could be about it. But yeah. Don't